Hey everybody. One of the really nice things with the Nintendo Switch is how there are just such a really wide, diverse number of different titles from many different genres, both new and old. And really kind of focusing a little bit on the old, the Nintendo Switch really has a plethora of ports, remakes, and remasters. Today I wanted to run through what I felt were some of the best remakes and remasters that were on the Nintendo Switch. Now, some of these are really more like remasters, but I kind of want to focus more on the remakes and not really going to focus on ports as much because there's a lot of ports available on the Nintendo Switch, but there are also still some that are missing. Made a video on this a few months back about what I believe would be the best ports, or at least some ports that I'd like to see on the Switch. So definitely feel free to check that out. But again, today, I just really want to focus on the remasters and remakes that we see on the Nintendo Switch. And of course, there's more coming this year. I mean, we've got Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, i.e. Luigi's Mansion 2, and even more that Nintendo has yet to announce. But I want to go ahead and start things off with some honorable mentions. And these are really honorable mentions just because I really haven't given it enough time for these, but from what I've heard from fans and whatnot, they've been pretty decent. First up, of course, is Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Switch. Again, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. I've heard this is a really cool version of the Wii Kirby game. I have yet to play it, but as you can see, I definitely picked it up. And it sounds like the game or side game that features Megalore is really where the money is on this. Kind of reminds me of the Super Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury, with Bowser's Fury really being a cool take on the Mario formula, similar kind of to this with Megalore's game. I will be playing the Return to Dreamland this year, so I'll definitely keep you guys posted on how I felt about that. Also, another honorable mention is Front Mission First, the remake. Again, haven't played this. I'm not a huge fan of mechs, but I had to snag this just because of it being a remake of, I believe it was a Super Nintendo game, and finally coming onto the Switch. Never made it to the US. Again, if memory serves me, but definitely had to pick that up. And then finally, I'm mentioning the remaster version of Final Fantasy VIII. This is a twin pack, of course, having the Final Fantasy 7 and 8 version for the Switch, but I really liked how clean 8 looked for the Switch, just because of how the original was a little bit, it's that whole you're the best looking guy here thing that Renoa says with Squall, and Squall's face looking all pixelated. I always thought it was a cool thing where he actually looks good, and then when this remaster released, Square Enix kind of poked fun at that, comparing the then and the now, and the game itself is okay. Probably like the second or third worst Final Fantasy in my opinion, but the love story was good, characters were decent, the battle system, I think, if you knew how to take advantage of it, was way overdone. But yeah, the remaster itself was excellent and can't recommend it enough. But let's get into what I feel are the best remakes and remasters on the Switch. And let's start with the Nintendo Switch only ones, because of course the Switch has both games that are available on the Switch as well as off it. To start off, you're not going to see on the PS4, 5, Xbox Series X, or Steam The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, the remaster. And this was a really good version of the game just because I liked how streamlined it was. I liked how it wasn't just, single screens on every single map, both on the overworld as well as on dungeons where applicable. I know that this had some issues with like frame rate and whatnot, but even besides that, having some of the quality of life things, like having 2 or 3 weapons assignable to buttons, having a solid lock button for the shield and the sword. Man, I can't go back to previous versions of Link's Awakening because of this, and I'm really hoping they do Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons this way as well. I know the Game Boy version of the NSO has them, and crazy as it sounds, I've yet to play them, and I really don't want to have to play that. I want to play it like this with the quality of life. but we'll see. It's definitely a great version of it, even though the aesthetic, which I really wasn't all that crazy of, I grew to really like. Overall, fantastic version. And my game of the year for 2023, Metroid Prime Remastered. This, it says remastered, as I said in my review and in my top 23 in 2023 video. This is remastered in name only. It might as well be a remake. The game has never looked better, never played better. It's sort of that it plays how you remember it sort of thing. There's so many different controller options. Again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. This is such a fantastic remaster, remake, what have you. Probably my number one, even on this top remakes for the Nintendo Switch here. But again, not gonna go in any sort of order because there are so many great hits. And to that end, we have the Super Mario RPG remake, which released in 2023. Again, such a fantastic remake. We see Mario, Peach, Bowser, and new friends Gino and Mallow never look better. One of the best aspects of this remake, not only just how expanded the whole world looks, 60 frames per second, no slowdown, no any issues or anything like that. The translation is streamlined. Best aspect, in my opinion, is the music. The fantastic soundtrack has been re-upped, revamped, and if for some reason you don't like it, has the option to play the classic version. So you really can't go wrong with that. I can't recommend this game enough. But the Nintendo Switch, again, not only has games available on the Switch, but also other systems. But really, with the Nintendo system, you really get that sort of portability in your hands-on if you can't afford the $350, $400 Steam Deck. To that end, I really recommend the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and these are fantastic versions of all of the first 6 Final Fantasy games. And weirdly, with the Final Fantasy series, you got a whole lot of winners and a couple not so much winners, and the not so much winner being the second one. But even with that said, this is the best version of the second Final Fantasy. One of my favorite things about the Pixel remasters is it gets rid of all the extra fluff that was added in with the Game Boy Advance versions of these. I don't like the extra dungeons. This is just the core games, and I feel like the developers made these with the intention for them to be the best versions of these Final Fantasy iterations, and it really is. Both gameplay being streamlined, some of the hardest versions, especially of like Final Fantasy VI, and it's got additional stuff to make it easier for you as maybe if you're a beginner player, where you perhaps like to kind of go through the games quick. So it's got boosters like experience points boosters, so you could level up quick, or if you want a harder game, do half experience points or none. So if you're masochistic enough. But love this version of all of these 6 Final Fantasies, and these were fantastic playthroughs. To that end, we also have the Final Fantasy VII Crisis Corps Reunion. Now, I'm having this up here with a small disclaimer. I played through the PS5 version of this. That being said, I've heard the Switch version is decent. Obviously, it's not going to be as load-friendly, load quickly. It won't look as streamlined as the PS5 version, but what I've heard, the Switch version of this is excellent, so you really can't go wrong if you're playing this on the go on your OLED. And again, you kind of know what you're getting with this. This, of course, is wall-hugging Zack, looking to avoid those random encounters on those missions. The story is okay, kind of the expanded prequel. A little bit of JRPG nonsense, especially when you get characters like Genesis quoting the in-game's own version of Loveless, Shakespeare, what have you. Regardless, it looks great. It's fantastic remaster remake of the original PSP game, and to that end, I thought this was great. Now, going into the HD 2D venue, we've got Live Alive. And this, of course, being a remaster of a 1995 Super Famicom game that we never got here in the States. And this, even though this came out in 2022, this was like number 7 on my list of 2023 games, because that's when I played it. Fantastic game, absolutely baller soundtrack. Can't upsell Megalomania enough. Love that track. But moreover, the 8 tales that are in this are a sort of cinematic beauty, whether it's the Western stylings of the Sundown Kid, or even the Street Fighter sort of telling tale there. Really, a whole bunch of different types of gameplay styles, even though it really is like a grid-based, turn-based JRPG system. But yeah, and I loved the whole how the stories link up after the 8th tale. Well, no spoilers here, but it's really the characters coming together, and especially the little last boss and the whole redeeming arc at the very, very end. Loved this game. Absolute fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. And going old school, we've got Quake 1 and Quake 2. These remasters, so Quake 1 I'm kind of mentioning because I didn't really play Quake 1 as much. Both the remaster, but from what I played, it was great. Quake 2 is my go-to because I remember playing this with my buddy Kenny in like the late 90s, early aughts, when we were getting out of high school, doing a little bit of projects, but kind of playing this, Mega Fraggers Forever. But a lot of the gameplay that I had with Quake 2, this is just like how Metroid Prime Remastered was, where it plays like how you remember it, and that's how Quake 2 was. Again, it was one of my top 23 and 2023 video picks, but the amount of bonus content that it has, both multiplayer as well as having like Quake 2 64 built in, I can't recommend this enough, especially for the price. Each of these are $10. So, and these are the limited run copies, which are $35, but I'm an idiot. I have to get physical copies of everything. But yeah, definitely, and especially the multiplayer on this. Even running on the Switch, there's like no slowdown, and even if you pick this up on like the Xbox Series X, you can do 8-player local multiplayer with little tiny screens, but it's still really great. It's really fantastic. And another really great game here that I'm going to mention is Star Ocean: The Second Story R. So I never really got into Star Ocean myself, but with this, you get a sort of action JRPG style of gameplay, but the sort of upscaling, it's like that HD 2D look, but without kind of that flatness that some of the environments have with the Team Asano games. Really, it's got a lot of beauty to it, and there's a couple little additional quality of life things that have been added with it, as well as other things that weren't in the original, like fishing, for example. But regardless, what we see here is kind of like the best of both worlds of what was in the PSP remaster, as well as what was in the original, just without all the glitches, without all of the stuff like that. Fantastic RPG otherwise. You're selectable between two of the main characters, like Claude here. Can't recommend it enough. And to that end, talking about JRPGs, we have Trials of Mana. And Trials of Mana, this is a 3D HD remake of a original Super Nintendo or Super Famicom game that we never got here in the States. And there's a Trials of, or a collection of Mana available for all major consoles that contains a translated version of Trials of Mana, i.e. Seiken Densetsu 3, available on all major consoles. But this is the 3D remake. It looks fantastic. The art styling is true to how the original sprites kind of sort of looked on the original art of the game, and it keeps the original story and everything like that, and it just feels like a way more streamlined version of how Seiken Densetsu or the original Trials of Mana was. And what's really cool too is I feel like the creators of this, once they finish this, seems like they moved on to the Visions of Mana game coming this year. And if Visions of Mana runs anything like this, the Mana series is back, and I couldn't be happier. So that really is the best remakes and remasters, I feel, for the Nintendo Switch. But what about some of the ones that didn't hit the mark? To that end, I'm going to hold up and show you Tales of Symphonia for the PS4. That's because the PS4 version of this, PS4, PS5, is probably the best version of this that we released in 2023, because this is a port, I believe, of the PS2 version. where it's only 30 frames per second. It wasn't as good as the GameCube, because I think the original GameCube version is like lost to time or lost or what have you. The Switch version of this is even worse, where there are frame rate issues, there's bugs. I think there have been updates that have occurred since its release, but I figured if I was going to get anything, if I was going to get a physical copy of Tales of Symphonia, because, you know, I'm an idiot and I got to get physical, I'm going to get it for the best version of it, which is going to be the PS4. Other versions of remakes or remasters where I feel kind of missed the mark, I'm going to mention Actrazer Renaissance. And this is like a tale of two different games. You had the original Actrazer, which is fantastic. Now, you had the 2D action kind of platforming, which was okay. It wasn't like the best. There had been other action games that have done it better, but the core of the best experience for Actrazer, the original, was the simulation, where you're building your town and fighting the monsters and everything like that. So Actrazer Renaissance took the action 2D part and, in my opinion, made it much, much, much better. The hero controls better, has more attacks and everything like that. The battles just make more sense. It's a little bit harder. But then the simulation, I feel like it took away the simulation portion and just made it this generic tower defense type game, where it's like, oh, okay, let's just go back to the well of what's cool now. It's kind of like how I mentioned where Star Ocean had added the fishing, because now everything has to have fishing, and I want to say that from what I remember, everything has a stagger bar, and so now with Actrazer Renaissance, everything has to be like tower defense. It's like everything kind of going back to the well of what's popular. And Actrazer, the original Actrazer, wasn't about that. It was about the combination of the action and then the simulation, kind of like two games in one. And by getting rid of the simulation and making it that generic tower defense game, or that gameplay, I felt like there was a lot of personality lost with that, even with like the added heroes and whatnot. So it didn't hold my attention long. I felt like that was a really major disappointment. But the music in Actrazer Renaissance is phenomenal. Like the original Actrazer, where the music was fantastic and it slaps, Actrazer Renaissance doesn't disappoint there. It's kind of like how Live Alive or Super Mario RPG's remake where the music really went up to 11, and even with like Final Fantasy, the Pixel remasters, fortunately Square Enix had really put the money in to provide fantastic soundtrack there for Actrazer Renaissance. Now I'll mention another disappointment, which this one's been out for a while and is available on all consoles, kind of like Actrazer Renaissance. That's going to be Blaster Master Zero. And the only reason why I say it's a disappointment is because everything with Blaster Master Zero was awesome. I mean, this was a remake of the original Blaster Master, really expanding on the Metroidvania concept. But the biggest disappointment is, as soon as I started playing and I heard that original Area 1 theme, I'm like, okay, I'm in for a good time. Then I moved to Area 2 and generic music. They didn't put in any of the soundtrack from the original Blaster Master besides Area 1. And the Area 2 through 8 themes, serviceable, they're okay, but it's not how the original was. And that to me was really disappointing and really was a missed opportunity. But what do you think? What are some of your favorite remasters and remakes that have appeared on the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd definitely like to hear from you guys. What did I miss? Were there other remasters and remakes that you liked really like a whole ton that maybe I haven't even mentioned? Let me know in the comments section below. And while you're there, make sure that you like or dislike, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.